Once upon a world at war, July 5th, 1943. Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Winston Leonard Churchill were knee-deep into their bombing campaign against Adolf Middle Nameless Hitler. This was known as Operation Point Blank, should this question ever decide a citizenship. During this offensive, the United States would pool in just by itself over 1.5 million tons worth of artillery noisemakers in order to help carve out all that strategic European countryside in an attempt to castrate Charlie Chaplin's fascist soup strainer twin. On this particular evening, the only bloodthirsty bogeys buzzing around could easily be taken out by a slap to the back of one's own neck. The chirping belonged to crickets and thankfully not Nazi gunfire. Well, at least I only claim battling insects for this certain swatch of Oklahoma, anyway. Found wedged between colorful Colorado and the panhandle of Texas. I'm talking about that funky part of the map that nobody really thinks about until we're all being pummeled by an error-defining dust bowl or squeezing our bladders while checking the 287. The only friction to be found during this peacetime? Scream from a rusty spring. Right before that, screen door that refused to latch smack shut. The only wicks ignited served to illuminate porches. No, if I'm right through here, Hitler might as well have been an alien on Mars. I mean, locals were called abroad for the cause, but for the most part, Boise City was tucked away in another dimension. We're back in a simpler time, too, you know? There was no air conditioning to be had in 1943. Your best bet was to either find an evaporator cooler or just do and bathe. I'm sure the bonfire must have been at full bloom prior to, despite it being a good couple degrees heavier than normal. As a matter of fact, the temp had been dangling annoyingly a few notches shy of that mood-altering third digit this entire week. Of course, the buzzkills would have already chased all the good boys and girls off to bed by this point. But it doesn't take a historian to deduce the activities that go on the 5th of July, especially in the middle of this up-and-coming neighborhood during a heat wave. Remember, they still got boomers to spawn in a couple of few. You can't tell me something somewhere in close proximity wasn't set ablaze and promptly congregated around. Speaking strictly as a Pacific Northwesterner, I know that nothing cements relationships quite like periodically having to crane your neck away real hard, either to the right or the left in order to find oxygen. The value of blinking real hard together and clearing those lungs in harmony every time the wind decides to change direction isn't lost on me either. I'm completely on board. If this isn't a scientific fact, someone is falling asleep in the lab, that's all I'm saying. It's as primal as the taste of beef and the feel of nudity. Nothing says we got this quite like a pair of hot eyebrows, dry cheeks, and roasted internostril membrane. I don't know what it is. All these 1,100 souls settled in for their sweaty summer's nap. 4 flying fortresses from the 333 bombardment group arrived overhead from Delhart, Texas. They were approximately 40 miles off course. They were green and on a practice bombing run. Kids sanctioned to play, make things go boom in the dark and run away. No one had a clue anything was amiss either. Loaded for bear, these mighty birds spun 16 propellers between them, 2 per wing. The big boys were looking to get them some from their proving grounds near Conlon, Texas. Conlon, Texas and Boise City, Oklahoma are obviously 2 different locations, but they share a lot of similarities considering they were in the same prairie, especially in the dark. Kinda you're off, but not by much. Analog precision takes hours of practice too. Let me tell you, I've had the pleasure of training guys how to navigate once upon a time before Google. Have you ever had this opportunity? I used to instruct rookie over-the-road truck drivers how to maneuver semi-tractor trailers from point A to point B once upon a time. The first lesson I learned is that newbies will always find a way to burn you. Unless you are magically clairvoyant and able to predict every possible outcome around every corner. The key is to know that going in and expect surprises. If you can evolve a sense of humor real quick, you might make it out the other side alive. I mean, or you might just die quicker. You never know. Just so we're clear about what I'm talking about, picture training wheels still left on a bike, and its riders completely cloaked in darkness. Picture men who only have a 1 in 4 chance of even surviving this experience, impatiently whipping on reins and making huge decisions. Not even a month earlier, back in June, Operation Point Blank claimed 903 from the old Stars and Stripes. These poor tenderloins were the next in line, riding war-era piston-engine dragons that's more liable to deliver her warriors to hell than any actual war zone. They just had maps, compasses, and calipers. Everything was manual back in the day. Well, everything except for gravity. Gravity's always been automatic. Loaded with 4 pounds of dynamite and 60 pounds of sand, the first party favor fell through Forrest Burke's garage near the post office. I should probably showcase Boise City, Oklahoma's courthouse a little in order for you to appreciate this tale of yesteryear. This one feature I or anyone who's ever ventured this way think of when this particular location gets brought up, besides that being possibly the last old school Pizza Hut I ever dined in. There's this brick son of a bitch that makes me think of my sister Lori's elementary school right in the middle of a roundabout and the choices between Texas and Denver. My friends from the south mistook the corner lights of this neat little structure as their bullseye. 8 people slept inside the unattached Burke home, but were reasonably startled awake by the noise this popper made when it crashed through the garage's roof and cratered its floor by 4 feet. Folks would start to rouse, as I'm sure you can imagine. The bewilderment worked to a lather as quickly as those 16 angry spinning fan blades circled back and produced another heart-stopping whistle. The second bomb just missed Baptist Church. Pastor Dodd's eyes fixed upward almost in horror. Of course, he hightailed it out to the lawn as soon as he got his overalls on. Just several windows. The sound of the air raid circling back must have puckered a few poopers. And the sheriff with 2 last names, Harris Powell, had to make that awkward phone call in the middle of the night to the appropriate airbase. A third bomb chunked Cimarron Road, a stone's throw from this Masonic masterpiece.
Well, goddamn, Irene, they're bombing us.
Fortunately, by this time, Harry was able to get through to the powers that be down there. Meanwhile, there's this truck stop. Long haulers eat at all hours of the night, and this particular night was no exception. There was a couple of fuel tanker drivers that certainly earned the plaid on their capes and the gleam in their belt buckles this evening. More than one of these absolute legends rolled up their sleeves and selflessly hightailed their own placard and bombed as far from this disaster as possible. Keep in mind, no one knows that this is a training accident yet. For all anyone knows, the panhandle is being manhandled by an enemy. The 4th bomb barely missed the last rig while they were grabbing cares and plinking back road grit. It only managed to mud up a porch.
By the 6th bomb, the power to the city was off, and more than one set of eyebrows were furrowed. More than one intergluteal cleft was clenched. And that's all I can tell you. Whether it was the lights or Dalhart control tower reaching our wayward boys, we'll never know.
But the 30-minute air raid on Boise City, Oklahoma concluded. The next morning, the FBI and investigators from the U.S. Army Air Force descended into town to poke around and see what they could find out. Lee Wright apparently slept through the whole ordeal. All he wanted to know is who muddied his porch. These investigators found a community that didn't seem that disturbed by the mistake. In fact, the total damage was only estimated at the bank busting $25. Everyone was satisfied that no one got hurt, no blood, no foul.